It happened on a Tuesday morning. For 28 days, my world had been a vacuum. A padded room with no doors, no windows. Then, a sound. It started as a faint vibration in my bones, then sharpened into a single clear note, the chirp of a bird outside my kitchen window. My breath caught in my throat. I strained, and another sound followed, the low electric hum of the refrigerator. Then another, the distant rumble of a truck down the street. They were the finest things I had ever heard, a symphony of the mundane. Tears streamed down my face, hot and silent. The world was back. My first thought, my only thought, was to share it. I had to find my daughter, Amelia, a brilliant and beautiful girl, who has been the sun in my solar system since her father passed. I pictured her face, the joy that would light up her eyes when I told her I could hear again. I stood up from the kitchen table, my legs shaky with adrenaline and relief, ready to run to her, to shout the news. I took a step toward the living room, my heart hammering against my ribs, ready to burst with the miracle of it all. Just as I reached the doorway, her voice drifted out. She was on the phone, her tone light and casual. I froze, my hand still in the air. "No, she's still deaf as a post," Amelia said, followed by a short, bitter laugh. "Honestly, it's like having a talking piece of furniture that can't even hear you. It's so draining. I can't wait until I get this scholarship money and can finally get my own place away from this." The miracle curdled in my chest. The symphony of sounds turned into a single deafening roar of betrayal. That one word, this, was me. I was the this she needed to escape. In that hollowed-out moment, the joy was replaced by something cold and sharp. A decision. I slowly lowered my hand and backed away from the door, my footsteps making no sound on the floorboards. I took a steadying breath, smoothed the miracle from my face, and carefully put back on the placid, gentle mask of deafness she had grown so comfortable with. I would not tell her. Not yet. And the worst part? That venom in her voice. It wasn't new. It was just the first time I was hearing it with my own two ears, unfiltered and undeniable. My daughter Amelia is 21. To the outside world she is a star, charismatic, wickedly smart and beautiful in a way that makes people want to forgive her for anything. For 21 years, she had been the undisputed center of my universe, the only bright spot after her father passed away. I saw her potential as my life's great work, and I nurtured it with everything I had. I see now that was my first mistake. I was so busy tending to her flame that I let her consume all of my oxygen, leaving none for myself. The silence had descended on a Wednesday. I was at the front of a lecture hall at the university, discussing the melancholic beauty of John Keats with a class of undergraduates. One moment I was speaking, and the next, a sudden, violent pop filled my right ear, like a gunshot at close range. An intense wave of vertigo sent me staggering into the lectern, and then, nothing. The worried voices of my students vanished. The ringing in my ears faded into a thick, profound emptiness. It was the most terrifying, isolating moment of my life. In the frantic days that followed, the doctors gave it a name: sudden sensorineural hearing loss. They spoke of viral infections, of autoimmune responses, of the frustratingly common answer of, "We just don't know." They offered steroids and sympathies, but the silence remained absolute. Through it all, Amelia played her role beautifully. She created heartfelt posts on social media about supporting her #BraveMom, complete with artistic black and white photos of her holding my hand in a waiting room. She was showered with praise for her strength and devotion, and she soaked it all in. She was building a narrative, a brand, and I was her star witness, a silent, smiling prop in the story of her sainthood. This image of the selfless daughter was so powerful, so convincing, that for a while, I almost believed it. But now, with my hearing secretly returned, my mind kept replaying the receipts of my own sacrifices. The internal ledger, as I'd come to think of it. The biggest entry was 2 years ago. I had been saving for years for a research sabbatical in England, a lifelong dream to trace the steps of the Bronte sisters through the windswept moors. It was my selfish, personal goal. The money was finally there, sitting in my savings account, a testament to a decade of careful planning. Then, Amelia decided she absolutely had to do a semester abroad in Florence for her art history major. It wasn't required for her degree, but her friends were going, and she presented it as a life or death matter for her creative soul. The cost was almost exactly what I had saved for my trip. I remember the conversation so clearly. She laid out her case, her eyes wide with manufactured desperation, and without a moment's hesitation, I transferred the entire amount to her. The joy on her face, I told myself, was worth more than any trip. I watched her post photos of herself drinking wine by the Arno River while I stayed home, grading papers. I saw my dream of England dissolve into her Italian fantasy, and I never once made her feel guilty for it. Now, I contrast that memory with a scene from just last week. I was still new to the silence, clumsy and disoriented. My prescription for the vertigo medication needed a refill, a simple task that now felt monumental. I couldn't use the phone. I wrote a note, asking Amelia if she could please call the pharmacy for me when she had a moment. I'll never forget the look on her face. She let out a long, theatrical sigh, her shoulders slumping as if I'd asked her to carry a boulder up a mountain. "Mom, I'm swamped with my thesis," she groaned, not even looking up from her laptop. "Can't it wait?" The request took her all of 5 minutes to fulfill later that day, but her resentment made it feel like I had asked for a kidney. My late husband David, a man whose gentle pragmatism was always the perfect balance to my bleeding heart, would have seen this coming. He adored Amelia, but he saw her clearly. "Sarah," he used to tell me, a soft warning in his voice, "don't ever let her mistake your sacrifices for her birthright. You have to teach her that your love isn't a blank check." I had failed that lesson completely. I had written check after check, and now my account was empty. The bank of my goodwill was officially closed for business. The deafness didn't change my daughter. It only ripped the blindfold from my eyes. It amplified the truth that had been humming in the background for years. I started to see the pattern in everything. The laundry I still did for her because she was too busy. The way she'd take my car without asking, returning it with the gas tank on empty. The expectation that I would fund her weekends out with friends while she complained about being a broke college student. Each one was a small withdrawal, an insignificant transaction on its own. But together, they had bankrupted me emotionally. Lying in my silent bed each night, I replayed the memories. I realized she didn't just see me as deaf, she hadn't truly seen me at all in years. So I decided to stop waiting for her to listen, and start making her hear the truth. The grief didn't just disappear. Instead, it underwent a strange kind of alchemy, transforming from a heavy, liquid pain into something hard and sharp. Like a shard of glass I could finally hold in my hand. The weeping, wounded mother retreated, and in her place stood the research professor I'd been for 25 years. My home was no longer a sanctuary of loss. It became a field of study. My daughter was no longer just the source of my heartbreak, she was my subject. The pain was still there, but it was no longer a weakness. It was now my motivation, my thesis statement. My methods were simple, almost insultingly so. My old smartphone, the one I'd replaced a year ago, became my most valuable tool. Its battery life was terrible, but it only needed to last an hour or two at a time. I'd start a voice recording, place it discreetly on a bookshelf or under a throw pillow on the sofa, and then go for a long walk or retreat to my bedroom to read. I didn't need spy gadgets. I just needed my daughter's complete and utter certainty that I was a non-entity, a piece of furniture that couldn't hear a thing. Her arrogance was my greatest asset. The first recording I captured felt like a physical blow. Amelia was on a video call with her boyfriend, and I heard her do an imitation of me. She mimicked the slightly flat, monotone quality my voice had taken on when I couldn't hear my own pitch. "She sounds like a robot now," she cackled, her boyfriend laughing along. "It's so creepy." I sat in my study, listening through the wall, my hands clenched into fists. To hear my own vulnerability, the thing causing me so much private struggle, turned into a party trick for her amusement. It solidified the ice forming around my heart. The next proof came days later. It was a phone call with one of her friends, a long complaint session about how she totally deserved to have my car whenever she wanted it. "I mean, think of the emotional labor I'm doing here," she said, her voice dripping with self-pity. Being a full-time caretaker is exhausting. A caretaker. The word was so absurd, so profoundly dishonest, it almost made me laugh. My internal ledger flipped open. I saw the down payment I made on that car for her, the insurance bills I still paid, the new tires I bought her last winter, all while she acted as if she were the one making the sacrifices. But the recording that sealed her fate, the one that gave my plan its final terrible shape, was the one about the scholarship. It was a Tuesday night, and she was talking to her best friend, practically giddy. "I'm putting the final touches on my essay for the Everwood Foundation grant," she chirped. "I'm really leaning into the whole, my mother's tragic illness was the crucible that forged my character angle." Then she laughed, a sound so genuinely mirthful it made my blood run cold. "I'm laying it on thick. They eat that stuff up." That was it. That was the moment justice stopped being an abstract concept and became a concrete plan. The Everwood Foundation Scholarship. A prestigious full-ride grant for students who had overcome significant adversity. I went online and did my research. I discovered the final selection process involved an awards reception for the finalists, hosted right here at my own university, and the head of the selection committee was none other than Dean Albright, a man I considered a friend and had worked with for over 15 years. The universe, it seemed, was finally offering me a stage. I had the recordings. I knew the date and time of the scholarship reception. All that was left was to set the stage for my daughter's final, unforgettable performance. The awards reception was held in the university's main auditorium, a grand old hall with velvet seats and dark wood paneling that always smelled faintly of floor polish and ambition. The air was thick with quiet reverence, filled with the polite murmur of academics, donors, and the other nervous finalists. I sat in the front row, a place of honor Amelia had insisted upon. I played my part, dressed in a simple gray dress, my expression placid and my posture suggesting a gentle fragility. Amelia, meanwhile, was radiant. She moved through the crowd with practiced grace, accepting condolences for my condition, and congratulations for her bravery. She was an actress giving the performance of a lifetime. What she didn't know was that I had already set the stage. 2 days prior, I had emailed my old colleague, Dean Albright, a kind, serious man I'd considered a friend for 20 years, who was also the head of the Everwood Foundation's selection committee. I asked for a brief, urgent meeting. In his office, I didn't weep or rage. I calmly explained that I had reason to believe my daughter's application contained profound misrepresentations. Then, I slid a small thumb drive across his polished desk. I didn't ask him to destroy her. I simply asked that before making a final decision, he considered the full story. When it was her turn, Amelia walked to the podium and was magnificent. Her voice, thick with rehearsed emotion, painted a vivid picture of a devoted daughter navigating a world of tragic silence. She spoke of learning sign language, a lie, and of late nights spent comforting her heartbroken mother, another lie. The audience was completely captivated, dabbing at their eyes with tissues. Then came the crescendo. She turned, her own eyes glistening with perfect crocodile tears, and gestured directly to me. "Through it all," she said, her voice breaking beautifully, "my mother's quiet strength was my inspiration. I felt nothing. I simply watched the performance, noting the skilled pacing, the dramatic pauses. It was, I thought with a clinical detachment, an A+ effort." Dean Albright took the stage next, his expression unreadable. He smiled warmly at Amelia. "Thank you, Amelia," he began, and I saw her relax, believing she had won. "Your essay and your speech were incredibly moving. So much so that your mother, Professor Sarah Jensen, provided us with some additional material to truly understand the journey you've been on." A flicker of confusion crossed Amelia's face, the first crack in her perfect composure. She glanced at me, but I kept my eyes fixed on the dean, my hands resting calmly in my lap. The dean gave a subtle nod to the tech booth in the back of the auditorium. The low murmur of the room died down, everyone expecting a heartwarming slideshow of family photos. Instead, the hall was filled with the crystal-clear sound of my daughter's voice, amplified through the expensive speaker system. It's like having a talking piece of furniture that can't even hear you. A collective, sharp intake of breath swept through the audience. A wave of confusion rippled across the faces in the crowd, People turned to look at each other, then at Amelia, whose own face had gone slack with shock. Before the whispers could even begin, before she could formulate a response, the dean let the second recording play. It was the sound of her laughter, sharp and ugly in the silent room, followed by the damning words, "I'm laying it on thick, they eat that stuff up." The collapse was instantaneous and total. The color drained from Amelia's face, leaving a sickly, pale mask of pure horror. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Her eyes, wide with panic, darted around the room before landing on me. She was searching for an anchor, for an explanation, for her mother. I met her desperate gaze across the few feet that separated us, a distance that now felt like a canyon. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I simply, and very slowly, lifted my right hand and tucked a stray piece of hair behind my ear. It was a small, quiet gesture, but its meaning struck her with the force of a physical blow. "I can hear you. I heard everything." Dean Albright stepped back to the microphone, his voice low but carrying to every corner of the room. "The committee will be re-evaluating this award," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. He looked past Amelia, toward the doors at the back. "Security will see you out." Two uniformed campus officers who had been standing, advanced. Amelia stood frozen for a moment longer, her perfect world in ashes around her, before turning and stumbling away without another word. And as my daughter was escorted from the room, her perfect world in ashes, I didn't feel rage or triumph. I just felt the silence I had once feared, now returned as a profound and welcome peace. I didn't wait for the fallout. I walked out of the auditorium, got into my car, and drove home in a silence that felt earned. Later that night, sitting in my quiet living room, my phone began to light up. It was Amelia. The first text was just one word, "Why?" I watched it glow on the screen, feeling nothing but a profound sense of distance. Then came another, and another, a frantic, desperate waterfall of messages that chronicled her entire emotional collapse in real time. The initial confusion gave way to panicked demands. "You have to call them. You have to fix this. Tell them you were confused, that you didn't know what you were giving them." When I didn't respond, the panic curdled into pure vitriolic rage. The messages turned ugly, filled with the same venom I'd heard in the recordings, only now it was directed squarely at me, unfiltered and raw. "You ruined my life. After everything I did for you. You were always selfish, always jealous of me. You're a monster." I read every single word, each one another shovelful of dirt on the grave of the mother-daughter relationship I had cherished for 2 decades. There was no apology, no remorse, no self-reflection, only blame. She was the star of her own tragedy, and I had just been recast as the villain. I looked at the final message, her name glowing at the top of the screen. I thought about the years of sacrifice, the Florence trip, the thousands of tiny concessions and quiet surrenders I had made in the name of her happiness. I saw with perfect, painful clarity that my love had been a resource she had simply depleted. There was nothing left to give, and nothing she deserved. With a steady hand, I opened her contact information, scrolled down, and pressed the word block. A confirmation box popped up, asking if I was sure. I was. And just like that, the noise was gone. The next morning, the phone rang. For a heart-stopping second I thought it was her, finding another way through. But the caller ID showed the university switchboard. It was Dean Albright. His voice was gentle, full of a sympathy that felt genuine. He apologized for the public nature of the spectacle, explaining that once he heard the recordings, he felt a professional and personal duty to prevent a fraud from being committed. Then, he said the words that unlocked the final door to my freedom. "Sarah," he said, "I took the liberty of looking up your file. You've been deferring a research sabbatical for years. The board and I are in agreement. It's yours. Take the year. The university will cover it. Go to England." That afternoon, I started reclaiming my house. I walked into Amelia's room, a place that still looked like the bedroom of a teenager, frozen in time, and I began to pack. I didn't throw her things away with anger. I folded her clothes neatly and placed them in boxes. I wrapped her trinkets in paper. I took down the photos of a smiling girl who no longer existed. It wasn't an act of rage, it was an act of liberation, it was an exorcism. When I was done, I opened all the windows in the house, letting the fresh air chase out the stale energy, and I put on a record, Vivaldi's Four Seasons, playing it louder than I had in years. Later, I sat at my desk, the soaring notes of the violins filling the quiet house. I opened my laptop and pulled up a file I hadn't looked at in over 2 years. It was my research itinerary for England. The cottage I wanted to rent in Yorkshire, the train tickets to the Bronte Parsonage Museum, the list of rare books I wanted to see at the British Library in London. I looked at the plans, then I opened my online banking page. For the first time in as long as I could remember, there was no impending tuition bill, no request for rent money, no emergency that required me to drain my savings. The account was mine, all of it. And I started booking. Flight to Manchester. Confirmed. Cottage in the moors. Confirmed. A few weeks later, a colleague mentioned in passing that she had seen Amelia. She had dropped out of college, unable to face the whispers and the stares. She was working as a waitress at a chain restaurant downtown, her brilliant future traded for an apron and a name tag. I felt a brief, faint phantom limb of pain, a flicker of sadness for the bright girl she could have been. But it passed. Her choices were her own, and my life was finally mine. The scales of my internal ledger had finally, blessedly been balanced. I now understand that my deafness wasn't a curse. It was a gift. It was a soundproof room that allowed me to finally hear the one voice I had been ignoring my entire life, my own. I look at old photos of Amelia, of the smiling little girl on my lap, and I feel a quiet grief for her. I am mourning a loss, there is no doubt. But I am not mourning my decision. I learned that true strength isn't about enduring endless pain for someone else. It's about having the courage to amputate what's killing you to save yourself. I had to become deaf to finally hear the truth. I had to lose a daughter to finally find myself. If you've ever had to choose your own peace over a toxic relationship, share your story in the comments. I hear you.